Hey ladies, let's talk about gap in sexual desire. That was the winner of the topics for the week. So let's get started. If you're live on this broadcast, I'm going to keep my eyes on the feed here. And if you have any questions, just type them in, or after the broadcast, you're welcome to type in your questions and I can get to those if you have something that I don't cover. But I do try to offer a free training every week for those of you who are in this space. If you don't know me, my name's Jenny Glick. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm a certified sex therapist, but in this space for you, I'm a relationship mentor. And what a relationship mentor is someone who helps you get from point A to point B. So although I've been a clinician for almost 20 years, I found at some point along the way that I am really good and really interested in moving women from point A to point B. So rather than having that space, and again, there's nothing wrong with therapy. I'm a therapist. Most of my friends are therapists. Therapy is useful and helpful and helps move us around and helps us have insight. And the function of therapy is not often to shift our identity, to shift how it is that we have come to know who we are as women, as partners, as lovers, as parents, as children, adult children, caring for your aging parents, whatever it might be. And that identity shift is what I have found to be honestly critical and pivotal in order to make lasting transformation in your relationship with things like sexual desire, connection, chemistry, things that most of us think of in terms of it's either there or it's not, right? In my years of training and collecting all the letters that I have behind my name, I worked with some of the biggest names in therapy and sex therapy and couples work. And I had lots of people tell me things that now I know for me are not true. And for them, they were true. I had one clinician who's written a book and is well known tell me, you know, if a person doesn't like the smell of their partner, they will never have that kind of chemistry and they won't be able to stay together. And here's what I guide for you to do is when we hear things like that, and again, it's not that it's not true. That is true for a lot of people, and it might be true for you too, and that's totally fine. But our not job, actually, I am going to say job because one of my graduates today, who I just spoke with, I won't name her name, but she said to me, she said, her job is her joy of being, which I love that, right? And so let's think about your job, your joy of being in that moment is to take that piece of information in and to calibrate it with your own knowing. So when I heard that piece of information, I thought that makes sense to my logical mind. But then I also thought, I know that there are also so many complexities for us as human beings that maybe is not true for everybody, right? And part of doing your healing work in relationship, and sex is such a big one, right? Is that as you're consuming material, we have 3 ways that we get to make decisions, right? One is by just listening to what other people tell us. I've worked with so many people who've said to me, I worked with a therapist or a psychic usually it's a therapist or psychic, and they told me I should get a divorce, so I did. Again, neither good nor bad, totally fine, but that's listening to somebody else's knowing. That's one way that we can make decisions, is by listening to somebody else's knowing. The other way is to trust our intuition, which is a wonderful way if you have a relationship with yourself, if you have a relationship with your inner knowing, if you've cultivated a practice such that you come back and you're checking in with yourself so you actually know the difference between your intuition and your reactivity, or the most dominant response that you tend to give in a particular situation, because those are different. Right? Your intuition is a kind of knowing, which is different than my habituated practice at keeping people at bay or telling myself I don't want to be close. And getting to know the difference is an intimate process, and it will require you to hang out with yourself quite a bit. Sorry, my hair's in my face right now. It's bothering me. So we find knowing by listening to other people, by following our intuition. And the third, by being critical thinkers. So that means that we do research, we consume things, and then we filter it through our common sense. We filter it through our own life experience. We filter it through what it is that we know to be true based on our own life, right? And so when it comes to something like the sexual health in your relationship, I suggest that you pay attention to all of those things. Yes, seek the advisement of people who know more than you, whether it's a sex therapist, a relationship expert, a book, a minister, a rabbi, a holy person, your spiritual director, your psychic, whatever it might be. And then filter it through your own knowing. And if you don't have a practice of getting to know yourself, of getting to know your own heart, and this is not a woo-woo thing, it's one of the big get-tos of life is to get to know you. Like, what is your knowing? What is your truth? Right? One of the women who I work with, who I spoke to today, she said, my truth is really mature. Yeah, it is. We have a lot of practices in the 8-week experience that I do with women. And one of them is getting really clear on our truths and having a writing practice and a sharing practice about the truth is, right? What's my truth? The truth is I do have sexual desire sometimes. The truth is I enjoy being touched in certain ways. The truth is that I don't know how to express my sexual wants. The truth is I feel nervous about receiving pleasure. The truth is I have been fantasizing about somebody else for so long, I don't even know how to hook those fantasies into my partner anymore. Right? When we start excavating and cultivating our truths, the story starts changing. And then the story becomes less about he or she wants more or less sex than I do. And the story starts to take on some texture, starts to have a little bit more life, right? And honest to goodness, until you get to know that, what we're doing is this very externalized thing of like, they want sex or don't want sex, and so now we're negotiating it. And it then won't feel like a shared experience because it will feel like something to check off your to-do list or something that you're pleading with someone to give to you, right? In my field of sex therapy, we all know, those of us who do this for a living, that gap in desire is one of the most challenging situations to manage with couples because we're such complex human beings. And to me, that's not a scary thing. That's like awesome, great. That's we have this complex situation that we get to engage with you, which will require you and invite you to show up with some willingness to be with parts of yourself that normally maybe you don't have to be with, right? Because it's not, your answer is not going to be a pamphlet. In my world, the answer isn't, well, you don't have desire, chemistry's either there or not, I guess you should leave. That's not my world. It might be yours. And if it is, and that's your knowing, beautiful. But if you've been doing this dance around gap and desire for a long time, likely you have some other knowing, which is why you haven't just left, because there's something more here to learn, to expand in. And usually part of the thing to expand in is the thing that you don't want to do. It's the thing that feels hard. It's the thing that makes you want to cringe and pull back, right? So spend some time with yourself. Spend some time with your own truth. Spend some time with how it is that you've learned to receive pleasure, with how it is that you and your partner share, do the flow back and forth of play. Get to know who you are as a sensual sexual being, and also recognize that you chose this particular person that you're with. And this particular person that you're with is different from you. They're different. And so how is it that you stay engaged? How is it that you stay curious? How is it that you stay open while there's difference? Right? What is your invitation in this relationship that you presumably chose, that you continue to choose, right? Part of recognizing that we have the kind of power and authority that we have, right? When we start recognizing that, we have great responsibility then to create the life that we want. So if you're the person who wants more intimacy, right? Start looking at, how do I make it difficult to get intimacy? Where is it that I show up with a demand? What is my history with this? How do I ask my partner? How could I show up in a way that would be more inviting for you? Right? If your partner is someone, and I've worked with plenty of people where the partner says, I don't want to ever have sex again. That's not my jam. Oh, okay. So how do I be responsible for my truth that I want to be physically intimate, and also honor their truth that they don't? And that maybe requires making some decisions that might be challenging and stretching for you. And that's part of coupledom, right? For all of us, whether it's around sex or children or money or living or retirement or whatever it might be. If you're the person who has a lower desire for intimacy, then you get to pay attention to what's your relationship with pleasure. That's what I tend to see a lot with women, is that the relationship with play and pleasure is really dialed down, which doesn't mean that it shouldn't be dialed up. Maybe you're fine. Maybe you're at a place, and statistically it's somewhere about 5 to 10% of women are absolutely not interested in sex at all. And that ship has sailed. And that's beautiful. And if that's you and you're super clear about that, and that is your knowing, wonderful. Then it's the invitation of sharing that, right? Without it being blame or anybody's wrong, and being responsible for that, which might mean making some choices that are challenging for you and for your partner, right? What I hope you're seeing here is that the good, healthy, joy of being. Thank you so much, client of mine who gave me that moniker. I love it. Your job is that you get to do the growth work in your relationship so that you become a bigger, more defined, more developed, more evolved version of you. Many of you in this space know that I have a core 8-week foundational training program that's incredible. And then after the program, there's a graduate space that the women go into, and we have about 85 women in there now, and it's optional. Not everybody goes in there who graduates. But in that space, I do a free training every month. So I do an hour or so of a training, and we did that this morning with each other, and I got to see everybody's face on their little Zoom box. The women who showed up, and we talk about all kinds of things, and we have a live Q&A. And so I get to see where these women are who worked with me, some of them 2 years ago, right? And I get to see what's happening in their world now, and how it is that they've integrated the 2 months that they spent with me, dialing into themselves, dialing into their knowing, dialing into their intuition, listening to their own hearts, and then showing up in ways in their life. And some of them have gone on to initiate divorces. Some of them, their partners have. They're all different things have happened. And those have been good and challenging things for those women. Many of the women have returned to their relationships in ways where things are renewed in new ways, and still, because it's life and because it's marriage, they continue to be challenged in new ways, right? And in that graduate space, what's so wonderful is those women have laid claim to their lives. So they understand that whatever the struggle is in the moment, and we talked about several today, including feeling overwhelmed by what's happening politically and culturally right now. We talked about, feeling the pressure of, needing to be sort of mom and going to school and the worker bee and kind of doing everything with high heels on backwards. We talked about the fear of change and the fear of wanting to have it your way and not getting it your way. And so in this graduate space, what's so wonderful is that this community of 80 plus women, right, is showing up in their higher version, their 2.0 version of themselves, even when there's a pandemic, even when they're walking through divorce. And they're stretching and growing themselves, even when there's that gap in desire, and getting curious and not blaming the other person, not blaming themselves, no longer terrorizing themselves with their own worry and overwhelm and bullying themselves with the not good enough story, right? They've learned how to take a pause and breathe and look at, okay, what's going on here? What do I have to learn from this? What's mine? What's theirs? Where can I resource myself? Where can I pivot? Where can I dip into this beautiful community and ask for support from these other women who've been honing their skills to be critical thinkers, to integrate the learning from others, and to have their intuition so that I can be bolstered up in making the decisions that I need to make, right, in my life, because your life matters. And so I can't sit here and tell you you should stay or go in your relationships, though I'm guessing that we're probably going to talk about that next week in our training. And what you will hear me say again is it's getting to know your own self and then learning how to stand on your knowing, which is not something that most of us are taught. Most of us are taught not to listen to our knowing, to ignore our knowing. Most of us are taught to listen to somebody outside of us, even when internally we're like, that doesn't seem right, right? And so if you've been struggling with gap and desire in your relationship, I want you to listen to yourself. I want you to spend some time looking at the truth is. Those of you who are in my graduate space, tag me in a question in there and we can talk about this a little bit further and I can remind you of some of the pieces, right, if that's coming up for you. Those of you who are in this space here, who've had that question about gap and desire, I want you to spend some time with your own heart, your own self. Look at your own truth. See what's there. Listen. Embodied listening. It's not just listening with your ears, it's listening with your whole body. It's showing up, it's paying attention. And then when we listen and we hear, we have a responsibility to act on it, right? To speak something, to set a boundary maybe, right? To show up anew. Don't bother listening to yourself if you're not going to show up differently, right? Because then you're just abandoning yourself over and over again. There's great responsibility. If you listen to my words and start considering showing up for yourself, it also means that you're laying claim to your own life and you're possibly taking the responsibility to do something about it, right? And so find whatever it is to help hold structure around you so that you can move through and you can step through that. What I find the biggest barrier for so many women in making big change is having a container, having a community, having that structure. Because left to our own devices, it's not because we're not interested or we don't want it to be different. Our dominant, habituated thinking and feeling and doing patterns will always win, and they will take us back to the old way, right? So I hope that this has been of service to you. Spend time getting to know yourself more and more. We could talk about sex forever in here because it's very complex and it's not something to try to fix. It's something to get curious about. It's something to explore. It's something to recognize, oh, this is what's in my life. And so this is what I'm learning how to dance with. So practice having some space and movement, which means getting out of that 1.0 narrative, right? Creating some space between you and that old habituated narrative, identity, right? So that you can learn to adopt a different identity that will serve who it is and how it is that you want to show up now. And if you want support and help and guidance in making that happen, DM me and we can have a conversation about that. Have a wonderful afternoon, weekend, and I will look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.